Hey, welcome back to the Field and Faith podcast. It's been a while, but we are back. And once again with me is Mr. Luke Detraz.
What is up, everybody? Sorry for the delay. We've had some life issues and all kinds of everything that could go wrong with stuff. But we are back and ready and moving to a bi-weekly style
of a podcast.
Of podcasting, yeah.
Yeah,
That's what
because,
we call it.
it's the holiday season. Things are a lot busier, and trying to get together has been a little bit more difficult. And life changes, especially for you, have kind of situated ourselves to kind of figure out, what we can and cannot do. So we're going to jump right on into what we're going to talk about today, which is walking by faith, which is primarily just going to be aimed at you today, Luke, because I think for what you've kind of gone through in the last few weeks has really tested the component that God always wants us, which is trust in Him and leaning on Him rather than anything else. So I'm going to leave it over to you and just let everybody know what's going on.
Yeah, we've had a crazy year, a crazy 6 months, a crazy last month. We obviously had a large death in the family, close death in the family. It kind of shook all of us. We knew it was coming, but we weren't all necessarily prepared for it. So it kind of rattled our cages a little bit. I know even myself, I was actually surprised at how affected I was. I knew I'd be upset and sad, but I didn't think I was going to be that bad. And then on top of that, now here I am a week or so out of losing my job. And trying to walk by faith on what's next and doing this podcast and Field and Faith as a whole and trying to figure out what God has actually really called me into. And that's where I'm at right now, which is the single craziest faith walk I think I've ever had in my life. And we're here and we're now, and I don't think I've ever been more faith-filled in understanding who I am to God and where my journey is going.
Well, I got to ask you this because we've read enough Bible stories and everything like that. Which character would you say that you are, kind of like relating with what you've read in the past, which is what you're currently going with? Like, well, yeah, putting you on the spot here.
I mean, I always feel like a Gideon, you know what I mean? Of like, are you sure, God? Are you sure that I'm qualified for this? I mean, I think that's always the thought in my brain of, am I really good enough at this? Because I think that's just my nature, because I like to be perfect at everything. And so I know that's been a thing with me and God of like, am I worthy to be doing this for you? Am I good enough to be able to do this? I don't know how to run a nonprofit. How am I supposed to do this? I know how to run a for-profit business. That's easy. I know how to do this. I know how to do that. I don't know. Yeah, ministry. I've never been in full-time ministry. I don't know what this means. So I definitely feel like a Gideon, especially too, of like, all right, God, if this is you, I'm going to test you a little bit. Okay, this doesn't feel, I'm at 99%. Let's do another test, God. I'm at 99.9. Let's do another test, God. So I've definitely, probably more on the Gideon side, you know what I mean, of testing and making sure, because I don't want to be wrong.
Well, I think that just kind of goes in with most of our personalities of what we've expected. I think for most of our lives, we've had it not necessarily easy, but there's been that consistency in life of paycheck, most importantly, which is, I think, the thing that has been the most testing for you right now. And with what's been coming in, but with God, of course, He's always said He's going to be the ultimate provider. He uses the examples of the birds in the air, that they are always provided for. And then how much more does He love us? But there's still that avenue of faith and trust and waiting on God to make sure that things come in, because it's not just us. The world is definitely feeling, I think, the squeeze of where our choices have led over the past few years. I mean, groceries are at an all-time high. It feels like gas has always been high for the last 4 years. And what our money once was is not what it currently is. And with all these costs and everything like that, it forces us to put a kind of a step back and faith in God and just hoping that more comes in for this event, Field and Faith, to kind of take root. because it's still in its infancy stage. We're still young little pups in this field, and people don't know us. They have no idea what we're about and whether or not it's going to go one way or how invested we are in it. And so it's just been a roller coaster ride of emotions. And you've been in the threshing floor. I'll use your Gideon story against you. You're hiding a little bit, but now it's time to like kind of come out and just see and place that faith in God and see where things take us.
Yeah. I'll kind of jump into this a little bit, especially with the finances. I grew up with little, and so understanding that and knowing how hard it is to have to work. I think we shared the story of me working all summer to buy a pair of Jordans. I know what it means to earn a buck and to spend the time earning that money. So money has always been kind of an idol for me. I always want to make sure we have enough, because I want to be able to walk in the store and buy what I need and not even have to worry about what's in the checking account. I want to go buy that new piece of camo, that new optics. I want to buy a gun if I want to buy a gun. I want to buy a video game if I want to buy a video game, if I still played. But I wanted to have that, and especially for my kids. I think we all as parents don't want our kids to go through the same stuff we went through. But this is also what I'm learning is a really good time for my kids to see, how did dad handle this situation? Things are getting more expensive. I think they're starting to notice it because they're buying Christmas presents for each other and their friends, and they're starting to notice, really, I just bought this stuffed animal and it just came in from Amazon and it looks half the size from what the picture was, and it was $13. Yeah, that's the world we live in. It's called shrinkflation. Things are getting smaller and they're getting more expensive. So going through this trial and test of money and stuff, and this is the first time in my life of walking through this that I haven't had 2 to 3 jobs. Because if anybody that's listening knows me, knows that I like to do everything, because I think it's fun to do stuff, and I like to do creative things and feed the monster is what I call it, because if I don't do the creative things, I kind of spin out of control a little bit. So 5 months ago, we were kind of figuring out some of the finances for Field and Faith and trying to work through that. And God kept harking on me that it wasn't about the money, and you're still holding on to this piece of your life that you have not given to me. So I said, okay, God, I'm going to give you my finances. So I give him my finances. I tell myself I'm not going to stress. I'm not going to worry. God's going to take part of this. And then my work stuff starts going downhill. Every week, my work is getting gradually worse. Not getting paychecks on time, credit card disappearing, all kinds of stuff are happening. I'm like, all right, God, you got this. I have no plan B. I'm not looking for jobs. I'm not doing anything. Normally, I would have been like applied for 5 or 10 jobs at this point, because that's just the person I was. And if something looks that scary, that's going to hurt my finances, I'm out, because my family comes first and foremost when it comes to the finances. So I'm trusting God and trusting the situation. And then now it's time to pay some of the bills for Field and Faith. And we have just enough money, not even enough money to pay for the insurance, which insuring a bunch of kids out in the wilderness with weapons and such is a little expensive at times. So trying to find that money and being like, okay, God, this is from you. We're going to figure this out. We have like 2 days to get this paid. Sure enough, reach out to a couple people. Hey, this is the money we need. We raise enough money, even more so that I feel like we're supposed to personally, as a family, pay for half of it, so we could put some of that money into the bank for the next round of whatever Field and Faith needs. Stepped out in faith in that, got uplifted, obviously, with God providing the necessary resources for that. Then we also joined into this funding seminar, this workshop for nonprofits, which was incredible. Over the last 3 months, I've been learning how to run a nonprofit properly, learn how to fund it, how to talk to people, how to do everything properly, from a godly perspective, and how to do it long term, and which that also costs money to do, which we really didn't have the money to do it, but I knew God was going to provide through it, and he has. Doors have opened over the last 3 months, and my faith has slowly grown, but at the same time, I've been a little hesitant. And of course, because at home, my work situation was getting worse. Every day, every week, things just got worse to the point where It's been a month and I haven't got a paycheck. Okay, God, I know you're going to provide. I know it's going to be in your time, and your time is not my time. And sometimes your time is a long time. But I'm going to have faith, and I'm going to believe, and I'm going to walk through this. And we did, and we kept going through it, and we had a really good fundraising season for Field and Faith to get us funded through like over the next, gosh, I don't even know how many months, 4 months or so. And just really kind of set us up for next year, which is awesome. And then on top of that, now we have doors opening so we can go into a high school and start a club. Some of the foster care pieces are falling into place in the right way, and other opportunities are arising, and everything is going really well on the ministry side. And then I get the word that I am no longer employed and that nobody I work with is employed. And that really took its toll, because you have to mourn it and you have to be upset, because you're going to be upset, because that's a hardship, especially as a dad, as a father, as a man. You're that provider for your family, and that's what you're called to be, right? Like, doesn't it say, I don't even remember the scripture where it says, like, if you don't take care of your family, like, you are the worst thing possible. Yes. Like, that's like one of the single biggest sins is not providing for your family, right?
Being so lazy in that regard.
Yeah, I wish I remember the scripture, but I just read it like 2 days ago. But so obviously I went through that mourning process, and it was really cool to see, because of my faith growing and watching God work in my life, to see the true separation of my body to spirit, because my body was mourning to the point where I was waking up and feeling like I was going to throw up all day long for the first week, and feeling like a 400-pound man was sitting on my chest at all times. But yet my spirit was like, oh, God's got you. You're fine. Don't worry about it. He's doing something. You just don't see it yet. So being able to see that and to stay uplifted and not get frustrated at home and not blow up on my kids, and now for my kids to see where I'm at. And now to a point of deciding that, okay, I'm going to take this a step further and follow God's faith, because he's called me into this ministry, that now I'm walking into this ministry as a full-time employee, which we don't have the money to pay me yet. And now walking that out and figuring out how that's going to work, but I am walking in faith that God is going to provide, because that is what he called me to do.
And that has obviously been the stretch, the waiting on the financial component and just waiting for other things to come in, because it's not just like what you're saying. Like, we've reached out, and I think we've taxed all of our connections to a point now where we've gotten into looking elsewhere. And now we're learning something completely different, which is grants, which is a whole other beast. And if you've never looked into those, like, I don't wish it upon anyone, because the process is borderline insanity, and it's confusing, and you don't know, like, what's this, when's this? They say it's open, it's not open. You have to apply here, but only here, between here and here, and you got to do X, Y, and Z, and it's a full-time job just to write grants. And we're looking for other means to do this while still relying on God to bring in what God is going to do. But in the meantime, doing our diligence and working the field, essentially, to make things work out, but fully trusting God in the process.
Yeah, just, God works in you, and you have to work it out, right? He's going to do his part, and you got to do your part. You can't just, I'm going to sit on the couch and, God, I'm going to just wait for that guy to come drop $1 million check in my lap, and it's going to happen. No, it's like, the reality is God's opening doors, and you got to walk through them. You have to physically walk through those doors. And it's been really trying, going through this fundraising process, and you're hearing all these success stories from all these other nonprofits of, oh yeah, we raised this much and this much. It's like, well, we raised half of that. And my heart gets burdened. And I'm like, gosh, man, I wish we had that network. I wish we had that longevity. I wish we could raise that much money. And then in my ear I hear, it's not about the money. And I'm like, okay, you know what? Good job, guys. You did a great job, and you're going to do great with your ministries, and I'm happy, and we're going to do great with our ministry. And I was like, all right, I'm going to keep going and keep grinding and keep doing what I need to do. And then now, even too, just meeting, like, I have meetings every day set up for just, hey, let me share my story. Let me share what we're doing. Let me share you with how we're expanding, because we're already expanding, which was not necessarily planned for, but kind of asked of, which is really cool to know that it's needed. But to share, and then people are like, yeah, oh yeah, let's talk in April, let's talk in May, let's talk in June. It's just like, well, I don't have that long. I know God's gonna do something, but yeah, let's do that. I will see you in May. I will see you in April. I will see you in June. But being able to walk through that when realistically I know right now I have 45 days to get this figured out before I got to go bag groceries to make ends meet.
Or just cook a lot more dinners and use the skills that God's already given you to kind of help and facilitate, what it is. And, that's the hardest part, is that trust God, but also like having in the back of your head, this is something that you want to be doing. Because you said something earlier to me this week that you finally felt God was closing a door and a chapter in your life. And that is now kind of being expressed in all of the moments that you've kind of changed course. You've stopped drinking, which is literally your entire job for the last, 15 years of your life. And now you've kind of officially closed the door in this section, and now you're working on what is next. And, whether it be a ministerial role, which is essentially going to be pastoring, I would say you're the shepherd of Field and Faith. You're the one making all the decisions. You're the one doing everything, and everything rests on you. Whereas everyone else, we all have our jobs. We all have our finances that we're able to bring in that allow us to do what we are doing, but also just helping out and facilitating. But now this is your life, and that rests on it being a nonprofit, but not a church, where you have people coming in every single week and giving their tithes and doing their donations. So it's placed that extra bit of, okay, God, how do I do this? How do I trust you through this process? Because this is going to be the rest of your life, is trusting on God to bring the people who might fall in line with the vision, or companies that want to invest, or this. And that is terrifying, exciting, confusing, wonderful, all at the exact same time.
Oh man. Yeah, it really is. Yeah. If you asked me like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, hey, you should be a pastor. Do you want to be a pastor? No, thank you. I want nothing to do with full-time ministry from a church sense. But then realizing, like, and really understanding and really spending time in the Bible and the Word and going, man, church is not a four-walled place that you go on Sundays.
Absolutely.
What we are doing with these young men, with these mentors, and just being out in the wilderness, sharing life, right? Read First Thessalonians chapter 2, Paul's talking about, man, I love you guys and I want to share the gospel with you, but more what I want to do is actually share my life with you, right? And I think that's really what we're trying to do, is we're trying to share our lives with other men to show them, hey, you're not alone. You don't have to be alone. You don't have to fight this alone. You don't have to be in isolation. There's a group of guys that want to go around you, surround you, and walk through life with you. I was putting together a study for the high school group, man, and kind of looking at like just the animal world, right? You look at the animal world, it's deer hunting season right now. Just look at bucks and does, right? Bucks being your male deer. They spend the entire year together in a group. A bachelor herd is what we call them. And then you have your does that stick together. And then when it's mating season, the bucks will move away for a little bit of time. They'll mate, and then they go right back to the bucks. They go right back to their circle of group. Why? Because there is power in numbers, there's safety in numbers, and there's a hierarchy that they learn from one another, and you have to. Like, look at the design. Like, God created that. He created us that way. He created the animals that way. Why are we not doing that as men? We are supposed to be doing that. So that's why we have to keep the ministry alive and going, is because we have to get men together. We have to fight for the next generation, for the younger bucks that are coming up and trying to get their time in the sun, trying to get their time to start their own families and their own legacies.
Yeah. And I think that's what we've tried to do here with the podcast, is acknowledge the man side of things. Like, we aren't necessarily directing these podcasts at the kids. We know that the young generation, I don't even know if they listen to podcasts. Maybe they do or not, but they're probably listening to like Travis Kelce and his brother Jason Kelce's podcast. They're not listening.
Or clips on TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. They just want the short, quick, funny stuff that gets pulled. But this obviously is needing and recognizing men, because it's not just about the kids. Like, we've also seen the need for it, and we'll probably talk more about what God's been putting on our hearts for men in the future, and what Field and Faith is going to be starting to do with young fathers and young men to develop different programs, because it's also about longevity and impact. We know we can have direct impact on young people, kids who are raised without fathers, but it's also about engaging men to be men. And it sounds crazy, but it means connecting with the outdoors, because so much of this generation is just lost in the technology, lost in the city, lost in this, that there is not that sense of accomplishment, sense of skill, sense of direction on how to maintain an enjoyable time out in the woods. Like, imagine trying to get your kid off the device for 48 hours or 72 hours while you're trying to go camping with them. And there's so many fathers like, I don't even know how to do that. So how am I supposed to get my kid to do that? And then what are the things that I need? What are the items that I need in order to make a a bonding experience between me and my kid out in the forest or out on a beach or out camping somewhere? And so that's, I think, the direction and the pull for other aspects of ministry. And we can't do that because that's a whole other amount of work that if you had another job, you couldn't be able to foster or to build out. But there is such a need for it, because it's just come from other men who are like, hey, I don't know how to do this. I want to know how to do this. Will you teach me? And so that's the change. And like, there's more than just what it is. And God's just been showing us and opening up more doors because of when you've expressed your stories. You could probably go into this a little bit more of like, how have your stories been responded? And like, you tell them what it's about, and then they come up with something else, and you're like, oh, I never thought of that before. Has there been anything like that for you?
I think the more common thing is the relatability of my story, of people saying the same thing of, yeah, I come from a divorced home, or yeah, my dad just wasn't around. Yeah, I dealt with these issues. Like, you look at some of the biggest businessmen in the world right now, like they probably had father issues or fatherlessness or some sort, because they were trying to feel that need of, I'm going to show him, or I'm going to be better than he was, and like, we've created this Western model of what a man looks like according to a standard of the world. And we have to like reprogram these guys and just help them out, because how do you teach a man to be a man? You have to mentor him. And so what are we going to allow to mentor him? We're going to allow social media. We're going to allow magazines, television. I mean, that's, I jokingly say it a lot. I learned how to be a dad from sitcom dads in the 90s. Home Improvement, Family Matters, Full House. That's what I knew as a father growing up as a kid, right? And seeing some of my friends' dads, but really not interacting with them that much. So like, I thought being a dad was this happy-go-lucky thing. One time in the season, you have a crazy issue come about, but the dad's always loving and there and kind, and that's what I thought a dad was. And when the reality of it, that's not the case at all. And then you have the early 2000s now that's teaching dad, and Simpsons and Family Guy, that dads are dumb.
Yeah.
And they're worth nothing, and they're going to do stupid stuff, and they're going to break things, and they're not worthy of it. And that is what we're teaching men to be now, that they are not worthy, that they're not strong enough, they're not capable enough, they're too masculine, they're too this, they're too that, and we are destroying what God created.
Absolutely.
Sorry, it's frustrating.
Well, it is.
I'm on fire for this, man.
Yeah, yeah, and it's hard. And this is what I think walking by faith truly is. It's counteracting what the world is sending out the message, and the message is clear. Dads are just kind of this aloof, oh, you're not actually going to be there, you're going to be X, Y, and Z, you're never going to clean, you're never going to do this, you're never going to provide, and society has continually said like, oh, this is for the female role, and then these males are just Homer Simpsons, and there's no life giving out of it. But everything in society and statistics will exactly say the opposite, which is more of a godly perspective, which is how much men are needed in the home, how much men are needed in raising the kids and giving them their independence. I mean, I'll fully give it that women are needed, I think, in the child rearing years, that nurturing, that loving. But when they get a little bit older, there's that discipline, there's that love, there's that tenderness, there's that sense of risk that is involved, that I think fathers understand a little bit more than mothers, because mothers are like, oh, I want to protect. And guys are like, no, let him jump off the cliff. Like, how high do you want to go? You test the limits with your kids and go on these adventures. And, we want to show what fathers can do, even with limited amounts of time, going out to Sedona, going out to Prescott and Payson and putting stuff together of like, hey, these are some opportunities for you to go and do that are low risk. They might cost you a little bit. But those are all vision plans that God has kind of placed in us to help young fathers, young men, kind of explore the outdoors, learn hunting, learn fishing skills. And, yeah.
Well, I think one of my favorite sayings that I use a lot is mothers, their job is to teach children how to love. Father's job is to teach everything else. And that's so true, because if you look at society, like, loving mothers create loving people, but if they don't have a father around, they're going to love other things. They might know how to love, but they're going to love the wrong thing. And you need the father to teach those other capabilities. And I think the other thing, from looking from a biblical aspect of this, the importance of a father, like, look at Genesis, right? Adam and Eve, they sinned. They're now hiding from God. What does God ask? Where are you, Adam? He doesn't ask, where are you, Adam and Eve? Or just Eve. He asks Adam. Adam's the responsible one. He is the father of everybody. Like, same thing. I'm the father of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. We have a responsibility as men to lead our families and to lead our communities and be this. Women are important and they have their roles and they need to lead too, but we have a biblical principle that we are called as fathers to lead our families, to lead our communities, and we have to stand up and stand in that gap for that.
That's good.
Yeah.
And now you're walking in faith, because it's deer, javelina, like open season for bow, right?
It's over-the-counter season. Yeah, I'm very excited. It's basically my Super Bowl, because you get a month and a half of hunting every day if you really want to. And I don't have a job right now, so I might hunt every day.
No,
I know, because I got to do school drop-offs and everything else. So
yeah,
I'm a stay-at-home dad /
work from
nonprofit / everything.
Yeah.
Janitor. Yeah.
So you will find out before this gets released, because we'll release this one on Monday. So check Field and Faith. You'll have already known whether or not he was successful, because I'm sure he'll have posted it on social media. If he had gotten, you're going, what, you have javelina and deer?
And deer.
Okay.
I'll get something. Might be a cold. We'll see.
Might be low blood circulation in your hands.
That is true. It's getting cold.
Yeah. So, all right, guys, thanks for checking in, and we will catch you on the next
We got to share a story, man.
What?
We got to share a story.
The story hopefully will be what you end up sharing with.
No, I'll share a story. I got a good story from one of my favorite times of over-the-counter season, maybe, 4 or 5 years ago. Actually, it was probably longer than that. We lost our dog, and I was out hunting / looking for her on a regular basis, and I was just sitting there sad because I thought she was gone forever. And I had been tracking this very large buck for a number of years. And sure enough, I see, and it was kind of raining and slaty and real dark, so you couldn't see much, and I just saw a flick of white. And I was like, that's a deer, that's a buck, going after it. So I dropped my pack in the middle of nowhere. I didn't mark it on my phone. I started hiking to it, and I was slipping like crazy because it was it was raining and muddy, and so I thought I scared the animals away. And then I get to a spot, and I hear crashing, and I'm like, "Holy crap! There is 2 bucks fighting right now, and I've never witnessed this before." So I'm like, "All right, I gotta get in the middle of this. I gotta get closer because I need to shoot one, but I also want to see this." So I'm like sneaking up closer, and then I stop and I look to my left, and there is a herd of does staring at me. And we're having a Mexican standoff, which feels like a half an hour. And I'm trying not to move because that's the biggest thing you can do is not move, because they'll put their heads down and like pretend like they don't see you, but then they'll look right back because they're trying to wait for you to move because they know you're there. So you have to hold still the entire time. And then all of a sudden, here comes a dirt bike rider about 10 minutes later of staring face to face with these deer. Dirt bike rider comes, all the deer scatter. I didn't see the bucks where they went, and I'm frustrated. But I was like, well, that's cool. I got to hear it. And I just had this crazy standoff with this deer. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to go see where their tracks are and see where they went and try to figure it out. And I start rolling up nonchalantly and come around this big tree, and 10 feet away, there's that massive buck standing there in the same spot still that he was fighting that other buck. The other buck left, and all the does left. He did not leave. And I'm like, oh my gosh, shaking. I have my bow in my hand, and I'm trying to get locked onto my nock so I can get ready to pull back on the thing. And I'm just staring at him in awe, and he takes off running. And I was so bummed out. Never saw him again. But it was a really cool, fun experience. And it will teach you to always be prepared because you never know where the animals are. That's my story.
That's it.
Yeah.
But you didn't get it.
Didn't get them. It's the closest I've been to a deer.
Yeah.
Hunting.
Well, deer in Arizona is a whole different animal.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys, thanks for checking us out. And we will catch you on the next episode.
Yeah.